Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We have merged the streams between WNST.net and BaltimorePositive.com. So if you're looking for us, the new thing, the new Luke Gravatar, you can find it all out at the Baltimore Positive. And certainly a week ahead with the Philadelphia Eagles. We watched them play against the Steelers on Sunday, and we watched a defensive effort that I don't know, Luke, that I would say would shock us, but everything. I was in the airport a month ago, right? Every season catalog or season preview has Lamar Jackson. It's supposed to be led by number 8, not led by a defense pitching a shutout until the 59th minute of the game. But the defense is going to start getting talked about a little bit here. And look, we're in Baltimore, right? We're used to that. But over the last year and a half, the defense was something, well, they're nice and they're good, but tell me about Lamar. Well, we don't have to talk about Lamar so much this week. We can talk about this defense and certainly the first-round draft pick this year.
No question about it. And even the second half of last year, the defense deserved to be talked about and would have been talked about had the Ravens not had the league MVP at quarterback and an NFL record rushing attack. You go back to last October. You think back after the first quarter of the season last year. Inside linebacker was a total mess. There were some issues with Earl Thomas not being on the same page. And you remember the post-game spat with Brandon Williams and what that would ultimately foreshadow as far as Earl Thomas being jettisoned a year later. They looked off. And it's not as though they were terrible defense in the first quarter of the season, but at 2-2, we had seen them get smoked by Kansas City. Remember, Kyler Murray had thrown for a bunch of yards in that Arizona game that week 2. And week 4, Nick Chubb and the Browns ran all over them. So it was a defense that really felt like it was in crisis. But we remember
they were trying to figure out the whole middle of the defense at that point. Literally.
No question about it. And last year, it was the Band-Aids, so to speak, in Josh Bynes and LJ Fort, the latter whom they re-signed, of course, and is still part of the defense. But one of the big storylines, despite the fact that their defense played really, really well in the second half of the season and was right up there with everyone, including the Patriots, who got so much attention defensively, was the need to rebuild that inside linebacker room. Of course, fast forward to April, they bring in Patrick Queen, and we've seen him have some hiccups. There's no question about that. He had a poor game against Kansas City. He's made splash plays, but we had seen him struggle in coverage. What we saw on Sunday felt a lot like a breakout performance. He was all over the field. A much discussed rivalry at LSU with Joe Burrow, to the point where those two would get a little heated sometimes. They're both that competitive, which I think probably says something about both of them. But he just levels Burrow, forces the fumble, recovers that fumble, recovers another fumble forced by Marlon Humphrey, returns that for a touchdown. It was a big-time performance by the Ravens' rookie inside linebacker, and that's what you want. That's why you would spend a first-round pick on an inside linebacker, to make splash plays like that. It's not 1996 anymore. It's not even 2006 anymore as far as what you're expecting inside linebackers to do. The game has changed a lot, even from the time of Ray Lewis. So I wasn't shocked to see Patrick Queen have some hiccups early in the season. I'm guessing he still will. He still needs to prove that consistency from a coverage standpoint. But what we saw on Sunday, just across the board, but really seeing the 21-year-old inside linebacker do what he did, that was really impressive to see.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke. He will be covering all things Ravens all week long, as well as monitoring the American and National League Championship Series. You can follow our act out on Twitter and, of course, at BaltimorePositive.com, where we're merging the streams. And nice of the Speaker of the House to stop by last week, and Nancy Pelosi to welcome us to the new world, as well as Dutch Rupersberger, Steny Hoyer. Lots of great stuff out there, as I am imploring everyone to vote again, or vote once at least. Only the president will tell you to vote twice. I'll tell you just vote once. Once will be good enough for me, especially if you're in Pennsylvania. Luke, for Queen and for Burrow, I don't follow the college wars, and the fact that Burrow went to Ohio State and got thrown out is, as interesting to me as Flacco going to Pittsburgh and Tyler Palco or whatever, right? But I guess they get asked about it during the week. Do they like each other? Do they not? I was very hard-pressed to figure out whether there was a sense of humor there or whether there was, something there.
I think they like each other, but I think it was very competitive. And as I said a couple moments ago, I think it says something about both of those guys. I mean, you have a young inside linebacker who just turned 21 over the summer, and he's not afraid to go, kind of toe to toe with a guy who won the Heisman Trophy at LSU and had just a historic 2019 season. On the flip side, you have a quarterback, and the stigma of a quarterback going up against defensive guys. He didn't back down from being competitive with Patrick Queen. So I don't get the sense that it's animosity, but I think there was some legitimate competitive fire and probably got heated from time to time. But I know Patrick Queen was asked about it after the game and said that he has great love for Joe Burrow. He was glad to get the first one out of the way as far as coming out on top. But I think there's a lot of mutual professional respect there. But in the heat of battle, guys that are really competitive, yeah, they're going to butt heads sometimes. So
Well, it's
I thought,
fascinating that it's going to be going on for years because for the
yeah, no
next 5
question.
years, they're both going to be here. They're going to play 10 times at least, right? Before second contract, before somebody's a bust. It is interesting that they came from this sort of storied team and program and the way Burrow played last year. And Queen wins the first battle for sure, right? For sure.
Yeah, and Ravens fans are happy to see that. And I mean, even extend it to, you hope, as a football fan, maybe not necessarily as exclusively as a Ravens fan, you hope that Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow is one of those matchups that the league's looking forward to twice a year for the next however many years. And we kind of talked about that with Lamar and Baker Mayfield when they had the Week 17 battle in 2018. But we've seen Mayfield have some issues, although give the Browns credit. They certainly have played well since week one anyway. But these are the kind of rivalries that are fun. I mean, this is what you want. We know Ben Roethlisberger is not going to be playing much longer. I mean, that's just reality. Joe Flacco's gone. Andy Dalton's playing in Dallas now in place of Dak Prescott. So, some of those AFC North rivalries, those meetings that you would come to expect twice a year within the division, that evolves over time. So even though Joe Burrow very much looked like a rookie on Sunday and the Ravens just gave him absolute fits and his offensive line did nothing to help him, he's still someone that I personally, I liked what I saw from him, obviously, at LSU last year, just a historic season, what he was able to do. And this is a kid who had thrown for 300 yards 3 straight games. The Ravens are the first team to really make him look like a rookie in over his head, so to speak. And again, I think the offensive line was a big part of that. But the Ravens get the first one against this kid, and I'm guessing there's going to be some much more competitive battles ahead. Maybe not this year, but over the next couple of years, if Joe Burrow is as good as I and also many people out there think he's going to be.
Well, for Eric DeCosta in the offseason to try to augment the defense, to make it better, to make it play faster, to make it stronger in the middle, Calais Campbell, the other things. This is a time, I think, 5 weeks out on this to once again tip our cap to the organization because I think it was very easy to get swept up in how great the offense was last year. But I think DeCosta spent as much time worrying about the defense as he did the offense in this offseason.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that the pass rush is fixed because they had 7 sacks on Sunday, and I think that's still a very big question as the 4-man rush, and that's going to continue to be a
Well, the
question
Bengals
because
have a bottom 5
they
O-line,
played
right?
exactly. But the issue that I think at this point, 5 weeks into the season, we can say with some conviction is the run defense has looked much better. The run defense really hasn't been an issue. Cleveland had a couple early runs that they popped. They've had some issues on screens, and we've talked about some of the coverage of running backs coming out of the backfield, but we haven't seen teams run all over this team, and it really does speak to having Calais Campbell there, having Derek Wolfe there, Brandon Williams now playing nose rather than 3 technique because there's no Michael Pierce. I thought it was interesting to note Justin Matabuke making some plays in his rookie debut on Sunday. That
Yeah, I
was
was going
good
to
to
say, I
see.
saw a lot of him on Sunday. And just seeing new names and seeing guys in there contributing at this point in the season, that's a good sign for the draft. And I know Eric was very bullish about the draft.
Yeah, and it's one game, but it was good to see. I thought what I was most encouraged by was the decision to deactivate Justin Ellis and Broderick Washington. That told you they felt pretty good about where Matabuke was with his knee. Because he missed 4 games. I never got definitive word, but the kind of, the timetable and the way he was kind of rolled up in that stadium scrimmage where he injured the right knee, probably an MCL issue based on how it kind of played out. So, but it was good to see him out there, and he played a good bit on Sunday. That was really encouraging to see, and he's someone that clearly they're going to expect to stop the run. But when they drafted him in the 3rd round, he's someone that they thought could do some things for them as a pass rusher as well, as an interior rusher. So he played 30 snaps on Sunday, which is a pretty good number for a backup in the defensive line rotation. So they were light at defensive line, and they decided to be that way on Sunday, knowing full well that Joe Mixon's a very capable rusher. So the fact that they were able to stop the run, and I mean, look, they had a 17-point lead 1 play into the 2nd quarter. That really took Cincinnati out of being able to run and really get their running game going. But it still just speaks to the run defense being much better than it was a year ago, and that's really it. As you pointed out, a credit to Eric DeCosta. We'll see about the pass rush, and we certainly saw a team that didn't pass that test when it came to Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, but the style that they played on Sunday, that's what they like to do against most teams out there. And we saw 5 defensive backs record sacks, which is kind of unheard of, but it does speak to that positionless style of defense where they'll line guys up all over the place. They'll put 7 or 8 at the line of scrimmage, and they'll rush 4 or 5 of those guys, but you don't know which 4 or 5 it's going to be, and you don't know which guys are going to drop into coverage. We've seen Calais Campbell drop into coverage. It just speaks to
I saw
the diversity, the
Judon
deception.
playing center field at one point on Sunday. I'm like, what the hell is he doing way back? He's 15 yards off the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, Judon, that's one thing I'm glad you brought that up, because people will point to his stats and they'll say, okay, well, he's making all this money. And look, just because the Ravens placed the franchise tag on Matthew Judon doesn't mean that he became Terrell Suggs, a 26-year-old version of Terrell Suggs. But Matthew Judon's still a good football player, and he's the kind of guy that they do ask to do some different things. Week 1, go back and look at the Cleveland tape. He dropped into coverage a whole bunch in that game. He's capable of doing that. Is he a guy that wins as many one-on-one battles as you'd like to see for someone that you're paying that salary to? Probably not. But he's the best that they have right now, and that'll be something that we'll continue to talk about as we get closer to the trade deadline, and certainly as we get into the offseason and draft season next April, as far as trying to find another consistent edge rusher on this team. But for what they are as a defense, what we saw on Sunday, that's how they like to play. They blitzed Joe Burrow a heck of a lot. I think it was up over 50%, and they pressured him. I want to say it was close to half of his dropbacks. Yeah, 59% of Joe Burrow's dropbacks, according to PFF, they blitzed him, and they pressured him on 47% of those. So think about that. Roughly 1 out of every 2 times he was dropping back to pass, the Ravens were pressuring him. That's not something we've seen every week out of this defense. I think that's well established, but for who they played on Sunday, the Cincinnati Bengals, with a deficient offensive line and a young quarterback who is still a rookie, despite some of the success he'd had recently, I think it was the way to go, and it was good to see. As I've said, and as I wrote at WNST.net and BaltimorePositive.com, we've been waiting for this offense to look like 2019, but Kansas City game aside, this defense now 4 performances of 17 or fewer points allowed. That's pretty good, especially when you look around the league, Nestor, and you're seeing defenses giving up 30 or 40 points just about every week. This is becoming even more of an offense-driven league when you look at how scoring is up over the first 5 weeks of the season. So for the Ravens defense to do what they've done, and I get it, Cincinnati, it's Washington, it's a Houston team that just fired their head coach. I understand. But they've still done some really impressive
Cleveland,
things.
and they're apparently pretty good. Come on, right?
Yeah, you give the Browns some credit. I don't know if they're truly, sincerely 4-1 good moving forward, but
they're 4-1.
Their record is their record right now, so you have to give them credit in that way. So I think it does really speak to this defense, and as I mentioned, and as you talked about, they didn't get the attention last year in the second half of the season, frankly, that they deserved. And they're playing with some big leads. I understand that, but you still look at what they were able to do. I mean, they just absolutely overwhelmed teams. But offense sells tickets, and you had the MVP at quarterback. I'm not surprised that they didn't get that level of attention last year. But to your point, they're getting it right now because everyone's kind of asking what's going on with the offense. Well, the defense absolutely dominated on Sunday.
Luke Jones is here. He is Baltimore Luke. He'll be out in Owings Mills all week long. I will be in Philadelphia. Me and Jim Schwartz in the same place at the same time. I saw the poor Eagles running around late into the afternoon. Rare is the day that I pull for the Philadelphia Eagles, Luke Jones, as every member of your family knows. Not the 76ers and certainly never the Flyers. But I was pulling for them a little bit. I want to go back to the draft because we haven't talked at all. I was looking through the draft class here, and you talk about Matabuke, and, you know, I haven't really heard his name in 4 months, right? And I saw Tyree Phillips at one point. Malik Harrison's running around in the middle of the defense. Devin Duvernay has been a recurring character every week. James Prochet's getting underneath kicks all the time, so we don't call him Proche, we call him Prochet. We know how to say it. But for the draft class, and look, I haven't been in a room with Eric or John or any of these people. I've been zooming back and forth, texting back and forth. I do know Eric was way in love with the draft class. And the fact that we're 5 games in, and at least I know these guys' names, right? That they had 6 picks in the top 106. We haven't talked about that in months. We didn't even know there was going to be a season. There were no rookie shows. There was no rookie, orientation type of thing where I haven't met any of these guys. I don't know what James Prochet looks like. So it's weird for me, but watching them, and they only appear for 3 hours a week now, right? Like, other than on the internet, you're out there. We don't have live shows. I'm not out getting to know players or any of that stuff, but getting to know these guys on the field a little bit. I'm hard-pressed to think of a time, and again, they're a good team. They're going to be a good team. They were 14-2 last year. They loaded up on draft picks. But to your point before the draft, where were we going to find oxygen for these guys? They had a bunch of draft picks, bringing them into the organization. Where would they get playing time? They've taken some good players, and more than that, and I want to tip my cap to Patrick Queen on this, to talk about the coaching, because you talk about he wasn't very good against Kansas City 2 weeks ago. That's where, the young version of me and the young version of Marvin Lewis would get together in Owings Mills, and every Friday after another Vinny, 42-38 loss. And you'd say, well, you're trying to get these guys better every week. We're trying to get young players better every week. Patrick Queen looked more prepared on Sunday than he did 2 weeks ago Monday night.
Yeah, and you want to see growth. I mean, that's what you're looking for from young players. Guys aren't going to come in and figure it out from day one all the time. I mean, it's rare when you have guys who step in and are just excellent right off the bat. I mean, that was one thing that I think C.J. Mosley didn't get enough credit for, especially when we're talking about Patrick Queen and inside linebackers. No, C.J. Mosley was never Ray Lewis and was never close to Ray Lewis. But from day one, when he stepped in 2014, I mean, he was an above average middle linebacker for this defense. And that was good to see, because the year before they took Arthur Brown and he never got on the field on a consistent basis. But in most cases, these guys need time to grow. And that's not to make an excuse. It's just reality, especially when you're talking about no spring, when you're talking about no preseason, when you're talking about what was a truncated training camp, when you're talking about just a building that doesn't lend itself to having the same level of camaraderie and comfort when you're talking about COVID-19 protocols. I mean, this is a challenging set of circumstances for this group of rookies, and for them to get the contributions that they've gotten to this point. And let's be very clear. It's not to say that all these guys are going to be starting caliber players, and we might find out a few of these guys can't play over the course of the next 3 months or over the course of the next couple years. And the odds say that that will be the case with probably a majority of these guys.
Or Patrick Queen plays so well that the Jets give him $24 million, which is possible.
Well, and there you go. There's always that as well. So right. But you go down the list. I mean, Patrick Queen has done what he's done, and he's had his growing pains. But we've seen splash plays. I mean, even in games where he hasn't played as well, we've still seen him flash. I mean, you see the athleticism, and he even talked about it over his last couple media sessions post Kansas City. He's acknowledged the game being a little bit fast for him. And but what you like to see is the effort and the speed and the willingness to make plays. And to kind of play with that fearless style that you need from an inside linebacker. And yeah, he's going to make some mistakes. And look, he hasn't made his last rookie mistake, despite how he played against the Bengals on Sunday. But you love to see the speed and athleticism and talent that he possesses. And once the game starts to slow down a little bit more for him, he's just going to make more of those plays, and you're going to see fewer of the mistakes. And that's what you're hoping to see. And that means you're talking about a guy who is at least an above average player and quite possibly blossoms into a Pro Bowl caliber inside linebacker. So, I mean, you go down the list. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, despite the fact that didn't get many touches on Sunday, we saw the run. You see the ability. You see what the Ravens saw in him. You see what he did at Ohio State as a bell cow running back for the Buckeyes for a couple years there. It wasn't just a one and done situation for him as the guy. We've already talked about Matabuke. I mean, Devin Duvernay is a guy I want to see them continue to get the ball in his hands because good things are typically happening. He didn't play a whole lot on Sunday. I think 18 offensive snaps, but he's playing more than he did over the first few weeks of the season. And you're seeing a kid who, one rush, 42 yards on the end around. I mean, that was their longest run of the day, and caught the two passes that went his way. He caught for 17 yards. So I want to see more of that, especially if we're not going to see those kind of plays being made by Miles Boykin or Willie Snead, quite frankly. So get him into the mix a little bit more. But you got to go down the list, and Malik
Willie
Harrison.
Snead's disappeared, hadn't he?
Yeah, I mean, and look.
And he's the big money guy, and he's the leader, and like all of that stuff, right?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call him he's the big money guy for this group just because of how young and inexperienced this group is. But I mean, it was a 1 year, $7 million deal. I mean, that's honestly, Nestor, that's not really big money for a wide receiver.
I got you.
Which is yeah. But to your point,
I still go back to the Jeremy Maclins and I mean all of that, right?
Oh, sure, but to your point, they kept him around for another year, and I'm not. But it's clear with Duvernay, and you hope James Prochet, although he's played pretty sparingly on offense. We did see him out there a little bit more on Sunday. You're hoping those guys can blossom because, as I mentioned, the Ravens, Lamar Jackson has two guys that he really trusts throwing the football to right now, and they need at least another one to emerge. I mean, you need that because teams know it.
Well, in the postgame when they're saying 15 and 89 and 89 and 15, then you sort of, You know
it. And when you see the numbers, I mean, Lamar, after the touchdown pass to Marquise Brown to open the second quarter, he averaged 4.3 yards per passing attempt. I mean, that's not even close to being good enough. And, I mean, he'd be the first to tell you that. He'd tell you he needs to get better. But part of that is also needing someone else to emerge that he can really trust. And that's a two-way street. He's got to trust what he sees as well. But I can tell you from sitting at the game, were there a few instances where guys were open? Sure. But there were many instances where he's looking, and if Marquise Brown is, has a safety over the top, or Mark Andrews has some bracketed coverage, things of that nature, there aren't many places for him to go with the football in those instances. So they need someone else to emerge, but it's a work in progress. And that's what I would echo and say in talking about this draft class. It's looked very positive because of the number of guys who've been on the field, but there are guys that are still growing, guys that are still going to make some mistakes. But it is encouraging to see how many guys have been able to get on the field in at least some capacity, based on the fact that this is a pretty darn good roster last year, if you recall, with a team that went 14-2. So for even for two or three of these rookies, let alone 5 or 6, to be getting on the field as much as we've seen, that does speak to very encouraging early returns for Eric DeCosta's 2020 class.
Philadelphia week. I miss it. Every 4 years we get it. I hope it goes as well as the the Washington football team week went. But we get this action every 4 years. We'll be heading to Philadelphia this week. Luke will be in Owings Mills all week. Congratulations to the Lakers and their championship. We'll be monitoring the American League and National League Championship Series. We'll see if the Astros are banging on trash cans in empty stadiums. We'll find out about all of that and more later on in the week. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net. You can find Luke at WNST.net. We're merging the streams. The WNST.net website about to merge over to Baltimore Positive. You can get the last remnants of WNST this week, and you can go to Baltimore Positive and see the future of all the things we have there for sports, news, leadership, music, arts, politics, just stuff, lots and lots of stuff, and education stuff as well. Big appreciation to Nancy Pelosi for checking in with us last week and saying hello. Speaker of the House joined us, Dutch Rupersberger. We had Steny Hoyer on this week. Mayor Brandon Scott will be coming on after the election. We had Bob Wallace on running for election. So we're into the election season. We're certainly into the news. And word is Rob Halfer from Judas Priest is going to be checking in later on in the week, too. So a little rock and roll. Encouraging everyone to vote. This is my ballot. Make sure you're using your ballot and take care of your American rights. And on behalf of my departed mother, who was not born with the right to vote, but got it soon thereafter, take advantage of your right to vote this month. There's my little public service. I haven't made any commercials around here for anybody other than Planet Fitness and Royal Farms and our friends at Raskin Global, but maybe I'll do a little PSA for vote in every segment. I am Nestor. He is Luke. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports and Baltimore positive.